Okay, so this is book club, Growing Gills book club week one. This is meeting number three, and we're doing chapter two, which is idea debt. And idea debt is one of the really big ones. Um, idea debt is it's funny. This article, the original idea debt article, came out in early 2016, so a really long time ago now. After I'd done this interview with Kazu Kibuishi, who came up with the idea, or not the idea, but the term of idea debt. And it was my first big sort of like, oh my God, everybody's paying attention moment. And lots of people read this article. You may even have read it, at that time as well. It went sort of mini viral briefly. And it just really, really woke me up to the fact that we are just drowning in idea debt, that everybody's got this. And so if you're feeling like, oh my God, I have so many ideas and I'm trying to juggle them, you're definitely not alone in that. All right, so I'm seeing some notes that I'm freezing. Let me quickly see if I can close some stuff and get a better experience for you. Hang on a second. Sometimes things just happen this way and there's nothing I can do about it, but I bet I can close things and get things a little bit better. So give me a second here. Should have done this before I started, right? Next time I will know. All right, hopefully that's better. I closed a bunch of tabs and things. All right, let's see. Okay, let me know if it's better. There's a bit of a lag on things, and so it may be that it takes a minute. All right, I'm seeing celebrations, so I'm going to talk about those. So Liz says, I can celebrate that I've been sharing my art daily. That is huge, Liz. Good for you. That's really great. It takes a lot of guts to get your art out there regularly and a lot of commitment. Rebecca is celebrating meeting and working with my accountability buddy. Awesome. That is a really good guardrail to put in place for the future. Brenda submitted a poem to an anthology. Good for you, Brenda. Selena did her 3 things today, which includes sewing 2 patchwork panels ready for a virtual sewing retreat. That's awesome. You're ready to go. Does it feel great to be done with those things today and be ready to keep moving? So Emmeline has made 3 drawings that she's pleased with and sharing on Instagram. Ren is proud of journaling every day this week. Allie, I'm proud of doing my time tracking and making all these meetings. Great, excellent. I'm just glad you're here. Um, okay, this counts. David says, I allowed myself to hire someone else to color my pages because I didn't like doing that part of the work, and now I can spend all my time drawing, which is making me more productive. That is a really great decision to make. You understood what you needed to do, and you did it, and you took care of yourself, and that is important and does count. Celeste kept my guardrail until today, and I've written my top threes the last 2 nights. Awesome. Keep it going. Don't worry about dropping it. Just pick it up again and just keep rolling. Teresa did guardrail habit 2 times this week. Excellent. All right, lots of stuff coming in. You guys are really great. So, still seeing the freezing happening. I'm looking at my own video and seeing myself freeze. So I'm just going to have to keep going here. And hopefully you can hear me. And even if my video is frozen, you don't have to look at my face. You can just listen to what I'm saying. I don't know what else to say here. So that's all I can do at the moment. So let's get back onto the lesson of today, which is idea debt. The first thing I wanted to check in with you on is top threes and guardrails, and just see how those are going. So make sure that you're commenting on those and discussing those in the chat. And the next thing I want to talk about is what is idea debt and why is it important to offload it and get rid of it. So I saw a comment come in right before I got started here, which is like, what is idea debt and how do we pay off this idea debt? The way you pay off idea debt is by doing things and finishing things and getting them, you know, just getting them off your plate. Um, or by deleting them and deciding not to do them. So the problem with idea debt is, and just big picture what idea debt means, the term, the way I use it, which was a term that I got from Kazu Kibuishi, the author of Amulet, is basically ideas for projects. It doesn't have to be creative projects, but in this context, particularly creative projects, where you are you're sort of holding all of these different projects in active memory. You're thinking you need to be working on all of them at the same time. You've got all of these different uh, elements and pieces that you're trying to juggle, and you're thinking that you need to like touch them all regularly. Like all of the things need to be, they need your love all the time. So if you have, 5 projects or 3 projects or 10 projects, like you have to cycle through them in order to be doing your job as a creative. Like that's basically idea debt. And you can see how that would just weigh you down. And I'm sure everybody's experienced this. I see Jenna saying, I am still frozen. I don't know how to deal with this. As long as I'm going to put this in the comments. Um, I'm putting this in comments in case the audio is not okay. Um, because the video of this is just my face talking, and I know you guys like to look at my face. That's very nice, and I'm flattered. But the most important thing is the message that's getting through and the chat that's happening. So just keep going in the chat and just keep going with this. So where was I? So when you're juggling all these different things and you're trying to touch all these different things, there are a number of different things that happen. Number one is your brain is just overloaded and you just feel busy and overwhelmed all the time. So the if you feel like every time you try to do something, and this is another piece of it, every time you try to do something, you're thinking, oh, well, what about all these other projects I'm supposed to be doing? That's a huge problem because that means that you're going to jump from thing to thing. You're never going to get into deep focused work because you're trying to deal with this, this feeling of like needing to switch back and forth. So that's a huge issue. That's a huge piece of this. Secondarily, when you switch from project to project, you have a really large degree of context switching tax, essentially. And context switching is when you switch from one thing to another. There are physical things that need to happen, so you need to close things down and put things away, and then get other things out and pull them out. So you have to find all the stuff. But there's also a cognitive piece to it where you are you need to close down your mental engagement, your emotional engagement with one project and sort of find where you were at with this other project. Depending on the complexity of the projects, how many things there are to get out and put away, how many ideas are there, how disparate they are from each other, that context switching tax can be very, very high. And so switching back and forth from different projects is a huge reason why we just don't get stuff done the way we think we should be getting it done. Because you're like, well, I had an hour on this and an hour on that, but you didn't really. You had 20 minutes on this and then 15 minutes on that because in between that you were context switching. So that's a huge piece of it. The third piece of this is when you are working on one project regularly and you're just kind of clicking through one project day after day, you have a situation where your brain is allowed to continue marinating in those ideas in between times. And obviously, most of us cannot spend a lot of time in the scheme of things on our creative work. We have a lot of other household things to do, things for jobs to do, can't spend all our time on this. But there's lots of neutral bits of time in there. And if you're working on one thing and you know you're going to be working on it tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, you can functionally like use that time, the in-between times, to go deeper into your project. When you're dreaming at night or when you're walking down the street, if anybody walked down the street these days, when you're taking a shower, when you're cooking dinner, you can be thinking about that project, and that actually exponentially increases your effectiveness on that project. Now, I know it's really hard to pick, guys. I know this. I feel it so deeply. I know how hard it is to say, no, because the not threes idea, right? What are the things I'm not going to work on? That's the hardest part of this. It's not the say yes to something, it's the say no to everything else. That's the hard part. Nonetheless, it is absolutely essential to allow yourself to have that kind of focus on a regular basis. And even if you only can stand it for a few weeks and then you switch to something else, you will have gotten more done and gone deeper into a project than you would have if you were trying to switch continuously. There's always this feeling of that we struggle with of guilt and sort of responsibility toward other priorities. And sometimes those other priorities are family or job or client work or whatever it is. But sometimes those other priorities are other projects, feeling like we have that responsibility to other projects. And that's where things fall apart. You can't, we have to be able to be super clear about what is our, when you think about top threes, one of those top threes needs to be on a regular basis, your creative work, or it's not going to happen. You have to choose those things. And then within the realm of creative work, it's got to be something specific. So that's what we're going to start working on today with the idea inventory. And we're going to get back to that when actually choosing when we get to one goal, which is chapter 7, I believe. So we have a few more chapters before we actually choose. So you have time to think about this and time to process on it. But you're going to start with the activity of creating the idea inventory, which is essentially just a list of all the projects. And people, I have seen lists that are 5 pages long, like 40 or 50 projects. It's fine if it's a long list. You just need to get it out of your head and start creating that trusted system that's going to contain all your ideas, all your to-dos, all your tasks, so you don't have to maintain them up here, and you can free up that bandwidth for actually finishing things. Okay, so that was my little why idea data problem lecture, and I'm going to check comments real quick here because I'm not able to do both at the same time. And I see you guys are commenting on one another, so that's awesome. And that is what needs to happen here in order to get everybody the support that they need. Okay, so things are giving up. I'm seeing that here, and how exhausting that is to think that through. All right, awesome. Okay, so I would love to see you start posting in the chat about ideas that you have, and I've seen some of them already, ideas that you are juggling, that are sort of competing for top position. I have one other idea for internet speed here. Let me just check one thing with you guys real quick, because I could possibly fix this sooner rather than later. Nope, that's not it. Okay, worth a try. All right, so Emmeline, even if you can only stand it for 3 weeks, yes, exactly. All right, so start posting about projects and things that you're struggling with, because I think that you can really lean on a lot of support from other people in this cohort to help sort those things out and how you feel about those things. So what happens when you have all of these ideas floating around? What happens is it forces you into a position of experiencing scarcity thinking, where you are pushing things down, you're kicking the can on stuff all the time, and then thinking like, oh, well, I'm going to have time to finish this at this future point, sort of imagining that your life is going to change radically between now and then, which it won't, by the way. Although, you know what, I usually say that this certain situation we're in right now, it could change radically, but it's probably not going to change radically in the way you want it to change. Like suddenly there's open acres of time where you get to do stuff. It's just going to shift where the pressure is. And so again, that's another argument for reducing idea debt. So there's basically 2 kinds of idea debt that I see, or at least the way I see it. One of them essentially lives in the area of fear and perfectionism. So when Kazu talked about this, he talked about the metaphor of snowboarding, and he said that he liked to go snowboarding, and he would see these like hot young snowboarders like hanging out at the top of jumps, as if they're sort of considering what to do and like how to take this jump properly. And he said, basically, you are, these guys are getting colder as they're there. They're physically getting colder, like their bodies are not warmed up, but also they are imagining bigger and bigger things out of this jump to the point where they will never hit the jump in the way that they imagine it. And so he learned to either hit the jump or pass it. And that's it. You hit it or you pass it. And that, what he essentially was talking about is perfectionism. That if you are imagining the outcome, if you pause and stop and think like, what is this going to mean? What's going to happen in the future? Then you are setting yourself up for failure because there's no way you're going to come up to that level. And so you just have to act and move ahead and do the thing. And that's why we're talking about things like guardrails and top threes, because that can help you start taking those tiny steps. And even on day one of this book club, a bunch of people were saying, well, I just get so terrified about what the outcome is and how do I get over that? And I say, because you don't think about it. You hit the jump or you pass it. You just go. And I know that's easier said than done. It is easier when you do know the next tiny step you need to take, as opposed to trying to do the whole thing at once. So there's that. But that's perfectionism. The other thing I see people do, though, is what I call idea type N for nostalgia, which is when people are holding on to old ideas that belong to kind of an earlier version of themselves, that they imagine that this other idea would be perfect for them and be the exact right idea when they were 15 or when they were 25. And now they're 40 or 50 or whatever it is. And they put so much time and energy and thought and emotion into this idea, it feels like you can't drop it. It would be a betrayal of some kind to drop it. But the fact is that the person you made all those promises to is no longer here. That person is your younger self. And all of those sunk costs that you've put into that work are sunk. You can't get them back. But if you put more time into a project that you actually don't feel attached to, and especially if you don't actually feel attached to the outcome of that project, you're putting good time after bad, and you're just gonna get burned out. It's gonna be a burnout situation for sure. I've been in that situation myself. It is ugly and it's really hard to recover from. So really pay attention to when you have a type N idea debt situation. So I would love to have you guys post one item of idea debt type P, right? Type P, and then what's the idea? And then I also want you to post a type N. So type N and what's the idea? And think about, as you're doing this, can it be both? Do you have ideas that are both? And what does that mean for you? All right, I see tons of stuff coming in here. People thinking about, posting different ideas and getting reinforcement, which is great. So originally, I asked you just to post ideas that you're sort of focused on, which is awesome. And I want you to do that and get support for those ideas. But I also want you to post things that are, and be more specific about like, what is stopping you? Is it perfectionism? Is it something else? And this whole nostalgia idea, are you holding on to something? Do you feel like there's so many people I've talked to, so many clients and students in the Creative Focus Workshop where we get down to it talking about their one goal and what their one goal is going to be, and they admit to me that they do not want to do this thing, but they feel like they owe it because they said to somebody or other that they were going to do it at some point or another. And I just say, like, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this thing? Do you want the outcome of this thing to exist in the world? Do you want to have done it? Do you want to have the ripple effects that are going to come from it? So once you produce this thing and give it to somebody, they're going to ask you for more stuff like that. Do you want that? Do you want to do more of it? It's the biggest trap we fall into. Perfectionism is something everybody experiences. It's related to, imposter syndrome. It's related to all these different things that we feel about taking big creative risks. Everybody experiences it sometimes. But this idea debt type N is this really tricky thing having to do with creative work and, our relationship with it. So I really want everybody to get super honest about that. Okay. Perfectionism, yes. Ray is creating a one-person show, stand-up act, memoir, and moth stories, blog, and podcast. Yes, you need to choose, Ray. And you know that better than anybody. I know you've been around here for a while, so I'm going to expect you to pick. Okay. Corrine says, I get stuck wanting what I make to be the best. Exactly. That's type P. That is, and the thing is, you can't think about whether it's going to be the best or not. You just have to make it, because we have no guarantees, and you have to live with the fact that there are no guarantees. That is the nature of being a creative person, and frankly, a human being. You have to live with the fact that there are no guarantees, and probably it's not going to be the best, at least not the first time you do it. But if you don't do it and go through that gap and experience that sense of, existential terror that it may not be the best, and then do it again, 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 you don't have a chance of it being the best. Once you do that and commit to that process of that scary walk through the gap, I'm talking about Ira Glass's The Gap, right? That courage, and it takes enormous courage, that courage to walk through that over and over again and expose yourself in that way over and over again, that is what opens the possibility that you will be the best at what you do. Laura says, my idea debt list made me realize I wasn't that excited about this big important novel I've been working on for years, idea nostalgia. Oh, Laura, I feel you. I have had that experience and been under contract at the same time and had to finish. Ugh, it is not good. Be careful. Susanna, like those pants that no longer fit. Yes, absolutely. Okay, Leslie asks a really good question. Regarding this chapter, I found myself wondering how to distinguish whether a project is becoming idea dead or is just the result of being in the dark forest. With many projects I've done, I don't have an enthusiastic yes with regards to wanting to finish. Okay, totally hear you. There are moments when you definitely need to just trust the system and just go through it. There are parts of the process of creating anything where you're not going to have confidence in the project. You don't really know, if this is right for you. One test, though, is thinking about the end result. If the end result gets finished, goes out in the world, are you going to be proud that it's there? Are you going to want to have the interactions with fans and colleagues around this work that reflect the work being finished? So, like, the work's finished, it's good, people respond to it, they want more like that, they want to hear from you about that. Can you imagine doing a talk about it in public? If this is something that you're going to be proud of, even if it feels really difficult right now, and you're not really sure whether it's right for you, like emotionally in this moment, it may be the thing you would still want to commit to. But think about the result of this, not in the sense of like perfectionism, like, oh my God, it's going to be, I don't know if anybody's going to like it. Imagine people do like it. And then what? Is that going to feel good to you? Or is it going to feel like a burden? That is a really good test that has nothing to do with your current feelings about it. It has to do with your idea and your vision for your life in a larger sense. Laura is starting from scratch on a new novel. Really good to start working on something I'm actually excited about. Good for you, Laura. Okay, let's see. Liz says, clearing idea debt type N reminds me of KonMari. If it no longer brings you joy, let it go. Yeah, I think that is actually a really good analogy. I wrote a post at one point. I think it's actually, some of it's in the book, this idea of how you KonMari your ideas. And the idea, the concept is sort of like holding your idea in your hands and like really pondering it. And this is what I'm saying, what I was just saying a minute ago to Leslie about thinking about the end result. Like, does this concept existing in the world give you joy? Do you really feel committed to this end result? And even if the middle is ugly and it's not feeling great, are you committed to that end result? And I know that's dangerous for those of you who are really suffering with procrastination, so I just really want to double emphasize the distinction I'm trying to make here. This isn't about like, oh, will people hate this? Am I good enough? Da-da-da-da-da. It's none of that stuff. It's like, imagine you are good enough. Imagine it does get done successfully. Imagine people react to it well. Not like you're a superstar, but they react well. Then things happen as a result of that. Do you want those things to happen? Do those feel good to you? And it's a legit question, because I think a lot of times we just imagine, oh, I guess that'll be great. But it's like, I was writing YA fiction briefly. And then I thought, do I want to be a YA author? And I looked at other YA authors I knew out there who were working and successful. And the way that they need to go on book tours, the way that they need to interact with fans in libraries, the fact that their fans are 12 years old and they, those are the conversations they're having is with 12-year-olds. I have a 12-year-old. I love having conversations with my 12-year-old. I don't want to have conversations with the world's 12-year-olds. That's not what I want for my life. So I looked at the life of a YA author and I was like, oh, I actually don't want that life. So this is not actually something I should pursue, because if I'm successful at this, that's my life. That's what I'm trying to get at here. Um, okay. Bethany says, type P is definitely all of my ideas. I've yet to finish one of my ideas for a novel. Okay, well, we're still going to sort, and if even if all of your stuff feels like it's under type P, there's still things that are more important and less important to you as far as other criteria and the ways you can decide. And we will get there when we get to the idea debt section. So don't worry about it too much. It's fine if you're really living in that area. Silbar, abandoned PhD. That is a type N right there. Oh my gosh, I've known so many people who finished and some people who didn't finish who are all living with type N for sure. Nonfiction book on women in the UK comics is probably P and N, says Selena. I have to put it aside for now, but I would like to go back to a different version of it at some point and still a passion, have publisher interested. You'll have to see at that point if it is a passion. Women in comics in the UK may be a passion for you. Writing a book about women in comics in the UK may not be a passion for you. It's important to make a distinction between those things. Okay. Ren, you're in a good place here. Type P is stalling me on my current novel right now. That is a solvable problem. We're going to get there. Type N is all my unfinished short stories. So if you know that's true and you don't care about the short stories, time to archive them and get them out of sight so you're not thinking about them anymore. Get them off the list. Anything that's type N, I like to think about doing sort of KonMari stuff with this too, like thanking it for its service, and saying like, you did such a good job for me when I was 25 or whatever, and thank you so much. I'm going to archive this. I don't still have to delete it. I don't have to burn it. I just need to know that I don't have to look at it right now. And that's what's really important. All right. I'm seeing great stuff here, you guys. Just about time to wrap it up. Lots of type P, some type N. I think that it's likely that most people have a lot of type P. A type N often will fade away naturally. But just be very careful to make sure that you're paying attention to that. Okay. All right, so this is great. You guys are doing a really great job with this. Keep talking about this. Keep getting clear about whether you're talking about type P or type N. This is a very clear indicator of which projects should be on your inventory and considered as you move forward and start to decide on what your one goal is, and which projects need to be retired off that list and archived off that list. Type N, which means you really don't care about the end results of it, or you really don't want the end results of it, and it belongs to a different version of yourself, or possibly it was somebody else's idea that kind of landed on you and you took it on. Those things need to come off your list. They need to get retired off your list. And so one of the first things you can do to start gaining clarity here is to identify type N projects and respectfully archive them off of your idea inventory. So that's your project for this week, or for this weekend, is to archive stuff off of your idea inventory that just doesn't speak to you. It just doesn't speak to you anymore. And just be real honest about that. It's fine to feel sad about it. It's fine to feel some sense of mourning over this thing that you thought was going to happen and didn't happen. But I really encourage you to spend some time putting things away and getting things off your plate and out of the way. Also would really like to encourage you to continue to work on your implementing your top threes. This goes for weekends too. The top threes may be very different on the weekend than they are during the week, and that's great. But that you still want to think about what are the top things I want to do? Me, Sunday, I want to read the newspaper. I want to not work, right? These are things that I need to define for myself in order to make sure they happen. So top threes are important all the way through the week. So continue doing that. And I will see you back here this time on Monday. And Monday is chapter 3, which is open loops. Dun, dun, dun. And if anybody gets started on open loops over the weekend, we will expect reports back. Open loops, I expect before and after picture, people. I really want to see what happens with that project. So thank you for being here. I apologize for the tech slowdown. Hopefully it's all going to be resolved next time. Who knows? We do what we can. We're just going to work our way through it. We are archiving the videos on a blog post now, which I will just quickly, I believe I have it still. I copied it earlier. Nope, it's gone. Anyway, on my blog, which is jessicaabel.com/blog, the most recent post is a roundup of where we're going to be putting the videos. Now, whether the video actually is video or it's just audio like this and like choppy video, I don't